Hey listeners, we had 2 weeks of shows before Mike and I decided to take a week off. We renegotiated our contracts with Sire Media to match up with Connor McDavid, but I don't think we came anywhere close.
At least we got a free soft pretzel out of it.
Oh, that was a good pretzel, won't lie. This is Talkin' Puck. Alright, and welcome to another edition of Talkin' Puck. Of course, I am John Pereira, alongside my brother and co-host Mike Pereira. Mike, how's it going?
Great. Another week.
Alright, and
down to business.
Yeah, another week. I could say it was a slow week, really. Not a lot of things are happening. We did miss last week. We were on summer vacation because we deserved it. And with us is our special guest, Andrew Dos Santos. Andrew, welcome aboard.
Thanks for having me.
How's it going?
Fantastic.
All right, and Andrew, first I want to talk to you about some stuff that's happening recently. Biggest news really coming out is the 5-year, $26.5 million contract signed with Tampa Bay and Andre Palat. Do you think this is a pretty good deal in Tampa Bay terms?
I think it's a little bit longer term than I would have expected, but it's not that bad of a deal. I think they're paying a pretty good price for him. I mean, he's a good talent. I see nothing wrong with it.
I do agree with that. One of those players I think complement Steven Stamkos's game.
Yeah, definitely.
I do like the contract. I like to see a little more production out of him, but I do think he's a good player. I think he's worth the money. I think Steve Yzerman did a good job here. With that said, do you think, Mike, Steven Stamkos is the guy to build around, or do you think Tampa Bay should look into finding a dealer?
Who else would be a big-time player that Tampa would look for? I would keep Stamkos.
John Tavares, maybe?
Oh, Tavares. And next year it's going to be... That's a whole nother story. You could probably do a whole hour show on that.
Yeah.
It's going to be a bidding war for that guy.
Yeah, another one off the top of my head, maybe Duchesne.
That's a topic everybody's talking about in the hockey world.
Yeah, but it seems like Joe Sakic is asking an arm and a leg for this guy.
He's asking 2 arms and 2 legs.
Yeah, that's true, yeah. I think he was looking for at least 2 first-rounders.
Something like that?
Yeah. I think Duchesne is good, don't get me wrong, but...
Not 2 rounders. Not
2 first rounders is a lot to ask for. But if you're on Steven Yzerman's shoes, is that a deal you would make? Duchesne?
No. I don't think so. It wouldn't be smart. It definitely would not be smart. Giving away 2 first rounders is like, if you don't get 30 goals and 100 points out of Matt Duchesne next year, it is a waste. Because that's 2 first rounders who could potentially do that for you. You might have to wait. But look at guys like Austin Matthews. I don't know. I haven't really looked at the draft for next year.
Yeah.
I mean, who has at this point? NHL analysts. Yeah. But I feel like if you get guys like Mitch Marner was drafted 4th overall by the Leafs. Yeah. He had a very productive season. Austin Matthews, who was, he's a generational player, and Connor McDavid. I'm going to use those as examples. Connor McDavid is cream of the crop.
Yeah.
But you have a guy like Austin Matthews who you draft in the first round. That's your potential franchise player after, say, Stammer can't play anymore.
Right.
He's going down with injuries constantly. You never really know what's going to happen. You need those first round picks for, that rainy day kind of thing.
Yeah. It's interesting to see because we've seen a team like Edmonton who had their churn time and time again with first round picks, and it took them a while to find that golden egg, but really they got Connor McDavid out of this. I would tank every year if I knew I was getting Connor McDavid.
Trial and error.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, they kind of got lucky because it was the draft lottery, and they kind of got lucky at the end there.
Sure, yeah.
And Buffalo had a higher percentage of getting, I think, was McDavid before. Instead, they got McDavid and the whole Eichel thing, right?
Same thing with Jersey this year, New Jersey.
Yeah.
Where did they come from? They end up 1st overall.
Yeah, that's true. Even Philly was 2nd overall, and they had like a 2% chance of getting that pick. So it's interesting. But that's what I love about the draft lottery, because even if you tank, it doesn't necessarily mean
you get the first pick.
Exactly. With that said, now that I think about it, we were having conversations. McDavid and Eichel, who would you pick? And there were some analysts out there saying they would pick Eichel.
Do they watch hockey?
I'm not sure. I don't know if they're still analysts or not, but I'm pretty sure now they're pretty convinced they made the right choice in a 100-point player in Connor McDavid. There are some reports out there that Thomas Vanek is returning to the Detroit Red Wings. He played there last year until he was dealt to the Florida Panthers. Didn't really find his foot there in Florida. But he did a really good job with the Red Wings. Is this one of those deals where you probably sign him a 1-year contract, try to keep it low?
Yeah.
I'm hoping if he even gets like 15 to 20 goals, I think Detroit kind of gets what they're looking for here.
Yeah, if he gets 15 to 20 goals, then they hit the lottery.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, I understand in Florida you can't have too many old guys. You know?
Yeah.
They already have that token old guy on that team.
We'll kind of get into that in a little bit, actually.
that old guy can score a lot more points than a lot of players in the league.
Oh, yeah,
exactly.
Absolutely.
Actually, I saw a stat there that the day Austin Matthews was born, Jaromir Jagr already collected 2 cups, played in over 500 games, and collected 633 points.
Oh, my God.
Jeez.
And this guy is still producing till this day. So that's an impressive feat, I would say, for a guy who's, 45 at this point?
And he says he has another 5 years in him. I don't know.
At least,
It's hard to believe, but...
Can you imagine if he stayed the whole time in the NHL?
That's true.
Yeah. See, like, he could go and get a couple of good years in the KHL. Up until 50. But in the NHL, you think... I don't know. You think he'll...
But he did lose some time in the NHL. He did go to the KHL for, 2 or 3 years.
It was around the lockout, right?
Yeah, it was close to there. And, it was scary to think that, he's still surpassing records as we speak. But had he played those 2-3 years with the NHL...
He would be number 2 all time.
Oh, for sure. At this point, I think we can all agree that that would be the case.
And that's around his prime.
Yeah.
Around the lockout time.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who knows? The numbers that he could have put up.
Absolutely. So, we'll get back to Jaromir Jagr in just a bit because that is an interesting topic that I like to bring up. But obviously, the biggest story coming out this summer so far has been Connor McDavid. I almost said McGregor there. I've been watching a lot of these events, the promos that's happening between McGregor and Mayweather. That I have McGregor on the mind, but McDavid getting a big payday with an 8-year, $100 million contract. Now this is a 12.5 AAV contract, and now we're looking at the next person Edmonton's trying to sign in Leon Draisaitl. We're looking at a dynamic dual team at this point. We've seen it in Chicago. We've seen it in Pittsburgh. And now we're seeing that sort of team being built in Edmonton. First of all, do you guys believe Draisaitl is that secondary player for McDavid? Mind you, he played decent in the season. He showed up for the playoffs. That is 100% sure.
Yeah.
But I think what's scaring me here is when Pittsburgh and Chicago made those deals for those 2 players, they've had results. And I mean, you can say Edmonton got a result with McDavid and Draisaitl in 1 year by going to the second round. But at this point, Pittsburgh had already won a cup. Chicago have already won cups. So now we're paying players in belief that they can get you to the promised land. Is this one of those times where you have to really look at this player and say, is he worth, I would say, about close to 10% of your team's salary?
I mean, you could be on the contract of McDavid. First off, I'm going to say you can pay that guy any amount of money. You can pay him 50% of your team's salary. He deserves every penny of it.
Absolutely.
But I mean, for 10%, I mean, Draisaitl, I feel like 10% would be a lot of the team's salary. It would be a lot. But anybody you put next to Connor McDavid, they're going to get points.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a line there. There's a limit, of course, of players. But any potential top 6 forward that you put next to McDavid is going to put up points, regardless of how good they've been in the past. And Draisaitl, he's a familiar guy. to be playing next to Connor McDavid. So I feel like they have that dynamic already. They have a little bit of playing experience together, and I feel like it wouldn't be that bad.
Yeah.
I feel like it'd be. They won't overpay for him. I think that's for sure.
The way I see it, on the Oilers roster, who else, if you cover McDavid throughout the playoffs, who else is going to score for Edmonton?
Yeah,
Lucic.
That's. Well, here's the conversation now. If we're gonna look,
because if you look at Pittsburgh, when Crosby and Malkin are not playing together, they're still a good team because
they have Ryan Ross, Connor Sheary, Phil Kessel.
Malkin can produce and Crosby can produce on two different lines. They don't have to play in the same line.
Right, and that's sort of the same thing with Taves and Kane. Kane was producing with Panarin last year.
Now, on the Oilers roster, who else, without saying Draisaitl, who can you rely on when there's a tough player in the playoffs that covers McDavid, like a shadow kind of thing?
Well, I think that's why they brought in Lucic. He's more of a guy that would protect McDavid. I'm pretty positive that's exactly what Edmonton was looking for when they brought in Lucic.
Not to protect, but so McDavid didn't have an amazing playoff run.
No.
Draisaitl picked it up.
Draisaitl was the one who carried that team in the postseason.
Now, because McDavid didn't pick up during the playoffs, he's pretty sure he learned his lesson, what it's like to play in the playoffs in the NHL.
Yeah.
But, who else would pick up the points? That's what I mean.
I do agree. And I think that's part of the reason why Connor McDavid signed the deal that he did, because when preliminary talks were happening, we were listening to reports that McDavid was going to sign $14 million a year, even higher sometimes. Like the closest thing I heard to what he signed was the 13.25, and I believe the one he has right now is 12.5. So, I mean, even if this guy signed, like you said, even if he took 50% of the salary, this kid deserves it. Like, he is the next guy to take the reins of the NHL.
He's gonna own all the records.
Exactly. I do agree with this.
Pay the
guy. But with that said, McDavid understood that, he can't handcuff the team. He has to make sure there's enough wiggle room for him to have teammates playing beside him. Now, the thing is with Draisaitl is the guy that showed up in the postseason. But we've seen it happen where players showed up in the postseason. They get a pretty good deal for the next couple of years, and then they don't show up. So again, this is one of those things Edmonton has to really be careful here, because if they lock up Draisaitl for 8 years to play side by side with McDavid, or even on another line here, he's got to make at least $72 million, which is a $9 million cap hit.
I think they'll sign him for 6 years.
Yeah, I was gonna say between between 4 and 6 years. I think 4 would be a safe bet, and then with an option, maybe re-sign him after that. But he's got to prove that he can be that guy, because you're not going to sign a superstar for 8 years, have a maybe okay, decent 4 years when you could have been having a phenomenal 4 years, and they could have signed someone else.
Now, do you think it's a fair assumption that he deserves about $9 million a year? Is that something you play a player of that caliber who's your number 2 guy? Because you remember, if you look at Chicago, Taves and Kane bring in exactly the same. Crosby actually makes less than Malkin.
Yes.
Malkin does bring home more than Crosby. And he's technically
Crosby took that pay cut so that Pittsburgh can build a team around
what it is. And this is what McDavid is doing here.
It's hard to believe at 12.5 you're taking a pay cut.
But that's how crazy it is right now.
He could ask for 15 a year and he'd probably get it because
did Edmonton have a choice here?
That's what I'm saying. Because of who he is,
I'm pretty sure Connor
and
McDavid,
his talent just got him to where he is now, and he could ask for 15.
Connor McDavid could walk in the room and be like, listen here, I want $20 million a year, and that's what I'm gonna get.
And then walk out and
walk out.
He'd get both in
and Edmonton will look at each other and be like,
he could have pulled a Steph Curry and signed for $200 million.
Sure, he could have. Mind you, the salary cap era, which is good. I like to see the salary cap go up because that means that the game is making more money. It's getting more popular.
Yeah.
So that's definitely on the upside. But again, if we see a $9 million deal here, we're going to see Draisaitl and McDavid taking up about 20 to 25% of the team's salary, making them the third really dynamic duo type of team in the league. So I want to bring in a new segment called Take the Shot or Make the Pass. Now, if you agree that you would take the shot, that means you understand what it is and you would try to do it. Making the pass, obviously you would avoid doing that. So if you're a GM of any team in the National Hockey League, Mike, would you look at this dynamic duo teams and build your team the same way? Or like a Chicago where you got Taves Kane taking 20% of the salary. Same thing in Pittsburgh. Same thing now going to happen in Edmonton. Is that something you look at in terms of building your team? Is that the way you would win Stanley Cups in this era?
It's hard to say because the talent level. Because of those 6 superstars between the 3 teams, there's no one else in the league, you know what I mean? It's just... I would take the shot, take the chance at it, but it would depend on who the 2 stars are.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
And how much you're paying.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
because you're looking at Kane and Taves, what, 10.5?
Yeah.
10.5
both of them, yeah.
for both of them. And they still got plenty of good years ahead of them.
Yeah.
They're on their prime right now.
Absolutely.
And that's a scary part.
But now you got to remember something here, guys. When you're talking dynamic duo teams, you'll always have the same issues that Chicago and Pittsburgh have been having, and that is your supporting cast. When you're looking at your supporting cast, you need to find them pretty much at the deadline. See if you can bring them in at a cheap rate. Hopefully they'll kind of pan out. Again, that was sort of like what happened with Ron Hainsey. They needed to kind of help out in the back end there for Pittsburgh. Andrew, do you think as a GM of the NHL you would do something like this, a dynamic dual team, where you would spend 22-23% of your salary on 2 core players and then kind of have to juggle the rest of your team around year by year?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would definitely take the shot at it, like as Mike said. I mean, 20%, what the salary cap is, what, 75? I think it's 75 million for next year. And you think about it, if you're paying 2 guys at 10 million, let's just say 10 million is a nice round number.
Yeah.
Not good at math. You got 10 and 10, that's 20. You still have $55 million to play with. If you get 10 more players around the average contract of $5 million that are putting up, 40 to 60 points,
right?
I think you can go pretty far. I think that's a good team.
Of course. You also have to, as Mike alluded to, realize that the amount of players out there is really hard to get. You always hear, especially at the deadline, they're looking for another centerman or they're looking for another right-handed shot defenseman. That is almost like a rare gem in the NHL nowadays.
In Montreal, I think we've been waiting for a centerman since '93.
Yeah, just about.
Just about.
Just about.
Yeah.
Just about. But everybody knocked the Edmonton Oilers when they traded Taylor Hall for Larson. And here is Larson, who's a right shot defenseman, never made noise in the New Jersey Devils. Came in, logged in pretty much 30 minutes a night.
Crazy time.
And now you could build a statue up there right beside Connor McDavid, and I'm sure people would really like it there.
Well,
but again,
that team always had defensive problems. They had all this goal scoring, but couldn't keep the puck out of there.
And I would say goaltending issues, but I think Captain Talbot probably helped out.
Sounds like a Philadelphia problem.
Yeah, don't get me started on Philadelphia.
You need a 3-hour show for the Philadelphia Flyers.
That is just a scary thought right now. I don't know. I'm a Flyers fan, but man, that goalie issue in Philadelphia seems to be just an ongoing issue that we can never resolve.
Well, they solved it with Brian Elliott, didn't they?
I want to say they solved it. It's a low risk, high reward type of contract. This is not a Brizgalov contract. This is definitely a lot better, an easier contract to swallow, really. But that's good. Coming up now is the rumors of Phil Kessel being traded out of Pittsburgh. A lot of the rumors stemmed because Talkin, who is an assistant coach for the Pittsburgh Penguins, left to be head coach of the Arizona Coyotes. And a lot of talk is that Kessel is the biggest fan of Talkin. Does that mean he goes to Arizona is beyond me, but we've seen Arizona make some big moves this offseason, so it's not a stretch. Again, as in perspective on a general manager of any NHL team, would you take the shot at acquiring Phil Kessel, who got 23 goals, 47 assists for 70 points last year, as a $6.8 million cap hit? It is an $8 million contract, mind you, but Leafs are retaining $1.2 million on that contract. So it is a $6.8 million cap hit. Would you trade Mike for Phil Kessel?
It depends on my player. What team am I owning? What team is I'm GM of? Because Kessel is the type of player you don't build a team around him. Kessel is a player that he needs other players to make him better.
He's a supporting cast.
Supporting cast, yeah, exactly. And that's why he wasn't so successful in Toronto.
Well, that's what made him so good in Pittsburgh.
Yeah. In Toronto, it was like Dion Phaneuf, the whole thing where they expect him to do so much, but he can't.
Okay, so here's the perfect tie-in with the previous one. If, let's say, you said you'd take the shot at building a dynamic duo team, would you take the shot now at getting Phil Kessel to support that dynamic duo?
Yes.
Knowing he's a $6.8 million player.
For sure.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah?
For sure, yeah. Then you got your superstar, whoever that may be.
Yeah.
He'll
but
be
now
the setup man.
We're looking at 30% here, guys, of your salary cap on 3 players. So, this isn't cheap.
Who's the Stanley Cup champs? Pittsburgh did it.
Yeah, they did. And I'm not taking anything from Pittsburgh, who is my arch nemesis. I hate that team with a passion.
And no one on that blue line is nominated for Defenseman of the Year.
Yeah. Well, to be fair, Letang has been out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So you don't. They have average players back there, and they still did their job.
Well, yeah, but when you have Fleury, they have Fleury and Murray. Yeah. If Fleury wasn't there to save their season, they would not be repeat champions. No way. Not with Tristan Jarry. Like, if they traded Fleury at the deadline, this wouldn't be a conversation that Pittsburgh Penguins would be back-to-back Stanley Cup champions. I don't think so. Fleury legitimately saved their season last year. So it is hard to defend that. Andrew, would you say that if you had a dynamic duo team, you would look at picking up Phil Kessel to kind of complement that team at $6.8 million?
At $6.8 million for 70 points, yeah, I'd take it.
Yeah.
The guy's he's got a killer snapshot. He's great on the power play. Like, I see nothing wrong with it.
A lot of people's complaints with Phil Kessel is his
attitude.
His attitude and his, I guess, his physical shape. He's not in the greatest hockey shape. I would say out of all the players.
Look back since his rookie year, he's been the same thing, but he's still putting up numbers. So
yeah.
I mean, I think that's just somebody. I think they just need something to pick on for him because he's not in the top physical shape like I don't know, Shane Doan, like a brick, built like a house, that guy.
Yeah.
But just because he's not like that, but he's still putting up the points, they're trying to find a way to kind of, talk down what he's done.
Right.
And you know what? And I'm a Leaf fan. I'm a die-hard Leaf fan. And the fact that Phil Kessel didn't really produce in Toronto, but now he went and he won 2 Stanley Cups elsewhere as soon as he left. My blood boils a little bit because of it. But the fact is, he's a solid hockey player. He's getting paid for it. Yeah, the Leafs overpaid for him, but for $6.8 million, you take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think any team. Yeah, he's not a team that you can a guy that you can build your team around. But I feel like as a supporting role for your number one, like a Draisaitl to Connor McDavid,
Yeah.
I think he'd be good.
See, I do agree with the notion that you don't build a team around Phil Kessel. That's sort of what Toronto was trying to do, really.
Big mistake.
They were trying to build around Phaneuf and Kessel here, but those weren't guys you needed to build around. But it is interesting to see that with Rick Tocchet leaving for Arizona, now all of a sudden Phil Kessel is the talk about being traded. Again, you alluded to the attitude issues, Andrew. So it'll be interesting to see if Kessel's in play here for the next couple of months before the hockey season starts. A big surprise in the offseason here is that we waited this long and still wait for someone, anyone, and I mean I'm begging any general manager here to sign the ageless wonder that is Jaromir Jagr. So as a GM, again, in the perspective of the GM of the NHL, Mike, Jaromir Jagr, do you sign this guy? And if so, how much? What's your highest rate you would go for a guy who's 45 years old, but he may be slower than his former self, but he definitely can still put up the numbers?
I would go like $1 million a year, see what happens, give him a shot. And it also depends on what team, right? That I got.
Well, I mean, in my opinion, I'd sign him no matter what. I think if you can get him at a 1 year, $1 million, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. That's a low risk, high reward type of contract. Now, being a Habs fan, Mike, if you were in Montreal's shoes, is that a tire you would look at kicking? Like, I don't see why that would be an issue for Bergevin to look at. Like, that's a contract I would try to sign for, some support. Because you guys, especially the Habs, are having a lot of issue in finding secondary scoring. So is Jagr...
Montreal's been a problem scoring, period.
Well, yeah, of course. But I mean, especially, they'll still get their scoring here and there. But especially now you lost Radulov. I mean, that guy, he was one of those guys that, sparked the team there. So would you look at Jagr being Mark Bergevin and say to yourself, I'll try to sign him, even on a 1 year, $1 million or $2 million? I would even say $2 million. I would try to sign him at that contract.
Yeah.
How about you, Andrew?
I think $2 million is fair.
Yeah?
Yeah, oh yeah.
So even if you had the Toronto Maple Leafs as your team, you're the GM of the Toronto Maple Leafs, being a team that just signed Patrick Marleau on your team, would Jagr have been a better option than Marleau?
No, absolutely not.
No?
No.
Mind you, again, Marleau had Thornton beside him. He's had Pavelski beside him. Toronto's a different kind of team, obviously. You now have the young kids, so Marlowe's going to bring that veteran presence. But wouldn't Jagr bring the same thing?
I mean, yes and no. I think Jagr's a scorer first and foremost.
Yeah.
He's not the playmaker like Marleau.
Yeah.
Marleau, I think he's also a goal scorer. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like Marleau, because he's not as old as Jagr, I feel like because he's played in the new NHL at a younger age and kind of he's progressed in it a little bit more. Like Jagr still plays his style of play.
Right.
Since 1990, he's been playing the same style of play. That's just Jagr. But I think Marleau, he's kind of progressed in a way and he's grown in with the new NHL. And I feel like him getting onto this young team, I feel like he has a lot to offer to these young kids, and he'll become more of a passer. You put him with Austin Matthews on that top line, and you have that dynamic duo, I think, that we were just talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. What is it going to be, like $13 million a year for Matthews?
It seems like it's always a pissing contest.
But that is an interesting point there, because we're coming up on last year of Matthews' contract here, and obviously now everyone's going to start talking about what kind of contract is Matthews going to get.
now with Mitch Marner and
You got Nylander.
all coming up at once. So
I feel like Austin Matthews is a team guy, and I feel like he would do the same thing. He would take a little bit of a pay cut now, so that he can build the team, so that he can win championships. You know,
I think so.
He wants a cup.
I hope they give him a Brian Burke deal kind of thing where nobody wants him and moves him.
Oh my god! Yeah, you hope that as a Habs fan.
Exactly. $200 million for like 4 years or something.
Yeah, it's interesting.
No trade clause for 9 years or something like that.
It's interesting the next couple of years what the Leafs can do, but as I alluded to in the last episode, when it was actually, I think it just broke when we went on the air that Marleau was being traded, or he signed rather, with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And one of the things I brought up was the deal. It was a 3-year deal, and I had expected a 2-year because of the fact that all those contracts are now coming up between Matthews and Marner and Nylander. So I thought that the 3 years was a little much. But again, if you wanted to sign Marleau to Toronto, I guess, that was sort of his asking price. And with a guy like that who's a proven veteran, you kind of have to give him that 1 extra year. But again, I did expect a 2-year deal with Marleau. One thing I wanted to bring up here is another new segment here that I like to call That's Offside. And it's something more like, I guess it's more of a roundtable discussion in terms of something I disagree with in the game today. And one thing I have to pick on right now is loyalty in the NHL, because you've seen it happen everywhere else. You've seen it happen in the NBA. Loyalty both on the team side and on the player side. We talk about guys like Russell Westbrook out of OKC who got upset because Durant went over to Oklahoma City. Now, I understand, listeners, you may not understand because this is basketball, but it's okay. But the whole story there was the guy was supposed to be in OKC the entire time.
That's it. I'm taking my talent to South Beach.
Yeah. So one of my things is Arizona throughout this offseason let Shane Doan go. And this was the guy that got drafted and literally stayed with this team since it was the inception version of the Winnipeg Jets. Do you feel that the team let him down here? I get really upset because this is a guy who literally stuck with the team that's probably talked about relocation 100 times after it relocated to Arizona. And then they talked about moving. They went to Phoenix, then they went to Glendale, then they came here, then they went there. And they're talking about new arenas and trying to make it work in Arizona. And he stuck through it all. And do you feel that if you were in Shane Doan's shoes and or the GM shoes, they should have kept him in this team? Or would you rather try to turn a new page here and try to get Arizona moving? Like, what do you guys think here? For me, you know what? If I was running Arizona, I'll try to get one of those deals I was talking about with Yager, like a 1 year, $1 million if you could. But keep him in the Arizona Coyotes. This guy bled this team since day one. And he still wants to play. And I think he still has some gas in him. So why not? Is this too much of a risk here?
Yeah, I feel like with Shane Doan, he could be their, obviously not could be, he is their leader, he was their leader, and he's done so much for them, but how far do you go before you realize, hey, I think it's time to go in a different direction?
Right.
I feel like they could have, honestly, I don't think they could have done it another way. I'm trying to think of another way that they could have gone about it, but you re-sign him, I think you're just following the same pattern that you've been following in losing hockey.
Right.
And they have all this young talent now that they got to build on. And if you're going to continue to sign these older veterans, that could be, trying to sign those 1 year contracts outside somewhere, go to another team where you can offer some experience elsewhere. because it's not working here, and you're just beating your head against the wall if you re-sign him.
Yeah.
I think that's my personal opinion on it.
I just think because the GM is a new kid, young kid.
Yeah, the kid's as old as me. A 28-year-old GM running in the
And
entire show.
he sees it from a fresh,
different set of eyes. That's probably it.
perspective.
He wants to build a team.
Yeah, and
I
think he's right.
Because he got Stepan and he picked up the goalie. Ranta?
Oh, Anti-Ranta.
Oh, Ranta.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
So they
Stepan
picked up
Ranta
Ranta
from New York.
New York.
And he also got Jarmelson
There you go. He's
from
he's
Chicago.
building a
He is. And I agree
looking
with
to
the
go in a
steps.
different way.
I do agree with some of the steps he's taken here. I think getting rid of Mike Smith was okay. You tried it with him. Obviously, the team wasn't really helping him out there.
And he's another guy who was around for a long time that they
He
could have
was.
probably gone the same way.
Yeah.
They could have offered both of them those, the 1 year deal. Hey, let's see if we can do it this year, and then if not, we'll part ways, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And now the Calgary Flames will win the cup with Mike Smith.
I will make a note here. If there's any defensive core to be scared of right now, it's in Calgary.
They're stacked over there right now.
It's in
After
Calgary.
they picked up Travis.
Travis Hamonic. You got
Giordano, Dougie
Giordano.
Hamilton,
Yeah.
TJ Brody,
my
Michael
goodness,
Stone, and Matt Brotowski.
Barkowski. Yeah.
You think TJ Brody is now going to be a second or third line defenseman
That's
and a
crazy.
defense pairing? He
That
could
is
be a
scary.
number one.
You could.
Any other team?
I
So
think-
you put like a Giordano with Hamilton, or Giordano with Brody, and Hamonic with Hamilton.
That's an unlimited mix.
Yeah,
you can put
so
any
you
one of them
couldn't, like,
together.
This is what I was trying to get to in terms of like
and
that.
they got
dynamic
Eddie
duo.
Lack as a backup.
Yeah, they picked him up. Yeah.
I don't know about that.
This is what I was trying to get to earlier, because when you're talking about dynamic duo teams, you're obviously changing your supporting cast. Now you're looking at a team like Calgary. They're built to just like Nashville. Net, out. So they start with their net. They got Pecorino in Nashville. And you got Mike Smith in Calgary. And Eddie Lack as his backup. We'll see who will contend there for the number one slot maybe. But then you got the defensive core. And Calgary is in the same boat here, I think, as Nashville. Because they both have a set of like the entire defensive core here. You can just a bunch of players here. You can make them mix match, do whatever it is you want to do with these players, and I think you're in good hands. You lose one of your defensemen and to the penalty box, I don't think you're sweating. Especially in Nashville, you got Subban, Ryan Ellis, Roman Josi. Like,
Yeah, you got
know,
a bunch.
and
I don't think they're
there's-
sweating at all.
they're not sweating. One of those guys going into the penalty box. You got two more to throw out there. And, they have all the options there. And the same thing in Calgary. So I think if Edmonton is going to get good, Calgary is just behind them. If not, if they're going to be more of a defensive team, closer games, I think Edmonton is more of an offensive, high-octane type of team with McClellan in the bench there. But with Calgary now looking the way they are, they're going to look one of the strongest defensive team next to Nashville. So that should be a scary West race there.
Just hope they can produce some goals, in which they're going to get a lot from this young core that they have.
They have a lot of pretty good young talent on there. Johnny Hockey, if he can put up a bigger year than he did last year, then that's all you can ask for.
I like that player.
I like him. He's great.
I think that kid's going to be wonders in Calgary. I think he's that kind of player. He's going to be, I think, the next Jerome McGinley for
Yeah, he'll be
Calgary.
that franchise guy
He
that,
is.
puts in his 10, 15-year seasons.
He is.
And with his 70 or 80 points, and, and they'll be happy with that.
Yeah, I think so. Which is surprising because Jerome McGinley is another one of those guys that's waiting to sign with someone. I don't know how much gas this guy's
I
got
love
left
the
in
guy.
it.
Just retire, man.
Is he
I love him.
not? It's funny because everybody talks about Sidney Crosby being the face of Canada hockey, and it's funny to me because when I think of Canada, like Hockey Canada, I think Jerome McGinley. Like, he was one of the best players, that
On the national team?
on the national team.
Yeah.
is he not the guy that set up Crosby for the golden goal?
He did.
Like, I think everybody forgets about these players, and that's what kind of irritates me. Is that I always been that kind of guy that's liked the players that does the small things. For me, being a Philadelphia Flyers fan, my guy, I always loved him. The reason why he's one of my favorite players, Simon Gagne. Guy can produce points. Obviously, he had concussion issues, but he could produce points, and he was that good. Like, I just thought he was one of those players where he did what he needed to do for the team to help them out. Another guy was Kimmo Timonen. One of those players, again, doesn't get the points that you want, but did all the small things, winning the puck off the boards, stuff like that. And I think Jerome McGinley, who is crazy because this guy can put up points like nothing, is not regarded as the guy who runs, Hockey Canada type of thing. Like, he's that guy to me. As much as I like Sidney Crosby, I don't like Sidney Crosby just because he's a Penguin, to be fair. But if he was a Flyer, I'd love Sidney Crosby, just like everybody else, right? I'd have like 9 of his jerseys by now. Do you think he's just overshadowed by Sidney Crosby, or do you think that maybe it's an overstatement that this guy is?
Yeah, I don't think you
face
can.
of Canada.
I don't think you can't say Hockey Canada without Sidney Crosby. I don't think you can. He's the best player in the world.
Right.
He's Canadian.
Yeah.
They just go hand in hand. I think maybe 7 or 8 years ago, it'd be a different story.
Yeah.
But in this day and age, Sidney Crosby and Hockey Canada, they are a perfect match. That is just the way it goes. He's He's Captain Canada.
Yeah.
I understand where you're coming from, because when I'm growing up, and you got guys like Taves coming up, and Tavares and Ginla and all those guys that had those massive showings in the Olympics.
Yeah,
that's what I think about it. I think of Ginla too. I'm right on the same page with you. But right now, it's Sidney Crosby, Captain Canada. That's just the way it is.
Right. It's funny because when we talk about the guy, the face that runs the place type of thing, you always look at the forwards. Why don't the goalies get that same kind of love? Carey Price, you gotta give him the guy just signed a pretty big deal himself.
Yeah.
What is it, 10.5 annual average? Pretty good contract in my opinion. One of the best, again, one of the best Canadian players to date.
To ever touch the ice. I can't stand the Montreal Canadiens. But Carey Price. I will take him in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
He is the best goalie to ever play the game of hockey.
Carey Price to you, Andrew, is what Sidney Crosby is to me.
I agree, yes.
And it's one of those issues where on a national level you're thanking everybody that Carey Price and Sidney Crosby is on your side. And then you go to the club level and you just can't have it. Like, it's one of those players where you're just like, I wish he didn't play for that team. But, I think goalies should get some love here, man. Because Carey Price, again, signing a contract, he gets his love. In Montreal. and that's a problem. Everywhere else is like, oh, we don't like him just because of the fact he plays.
Because you're not playing the Montreal Canadiens. You're just playing Carey Price.
It's true.
Those guys are a bunch of pylons over there. So you got Carey Price in the net, you have a chance to win. And that's why you signed the guy for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Jealous.
Oh, man. It's getting heated in this room as we speak. Some notable unrestricted free agents that are out there. Andrei Markov. Is that a player you guys would pick up?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah, absolutely.
Even though he I think he's asking here for like close to $6 million a year or something like that.
He is, but he's a phenomenal defender. Phenomenal. I think he's a stay-at-home guy. He's that kind of guy that he's almost like a behind-the-scenes kind of defender. He's not going to get that open recognition, word of mouth kind of recognition, but that he's putting in that ice time. With the time that he is putting on the ice, he's doing his job. And that's what you can ask for. If you're going to pay a guy that much money, if he's going to ask for that much money, and he's got to produce at that contract.
And he's going to log in a lot of ice time.
A lot of ice time, and that's what you want. He's a top forward.
I do agree. I think if you're looking for a defenseman, which is funny because I think that's what Montreal is looking for.
It's a little strange situation.
It's a strange situation going on there. But I think it's because Bergevin thinks Markov is asking too much for what Bergevin's willing to give. And that's where the problem is happening right now there. I still think Montreal dropped the ball here with Radulov.
Radulov, yeah.
Reason being is the reports now are saying that Montreal offered the same thing Dallas did. And as much as I would say, he could sign with Montreal, there's a couple of reasons why I see him sign with Dallas. Dallas, I believe, reportedly, again, gave him the offer first. So I think that's what kind of tipped Dallas in favor of Montreal here. The second thing is Texas has, I believe, no state tax. So
that's
obviously,
a big driver.
that's can you go wrong with that? Like, that's more money. And now you're making U.S. dollars over Canadian, and you're not getting state taxed. So, in my opinion, I don't see what he did was
that's a win.
That's a win. But
any one of us would do it.
But I think Bergevin dropped the ball there because if he was staying on his toes, I think they could have re-signed him. And that's a big loss because, again, Montreal has no scoring aside from like one line here. If they put Galchenyuk, Pacioretty, and
should have kept
Drouin.
Radulov and traded Plekanec. Please get rid of him.
Get rid of Plekanec?
Yeah. He's a wicked face-off man, but for what he's making, he's got to produce.
I'm sorry,
more.
but they can't afford to not win face-offs.
Yeah, I know, but
you need at least one that's going to win you those face-offs. I mean, you got to control the puck. The defense with their defense core right now kind of going down the tubes. If you're not winning face-offs, you're not controlling the first couple of seconds of puck time. Like, I don't know.
That is interesting, and I just realized something too. Nashville's captain, Mike Fisher, is also an unrestricted free agent
After this season,
right now.
Oh,
So I'm just curious here. If Mike Fisher doesn't go and stay with the Nashville Predators, who's the next captain out of Nashville?
Subban.
You think so? I had to bring it up. Because we're talking Montreal here, and I just noticed Fisher's name, and the first instinct I thought was, do you put the captaincy on Subban?
They won't. But I feel like I think it wouldn't be a bad move. I think, in my opinion, it's a good move.
If it's not Subban, then who would it be? Like, they got rid of Neil. They didn't get rid of him, but he was drafted. To Vegas Golden Knights. So, who do you slap the C on? The only other person I see here is either Ryan Ellis or Roman Josi. But the intrigue there is putting the captaincy on PK Subban, and I would love to see that.
I don't think.
Nick Bonino?
Nick Bonino? Yeah. Nick Bonino, yeah.
Give it to Pekka.
Oh, you can't do that.
Yeah, why not?
You can't do that.
Why not?
You've seen it happen in Vancouver with Luongo, but I don't think you can do that.
I don't think you can do that to a goalie. I don't think it's not even a matter of a goalie can't be a captain, as much as people say, but I think you don't want to do that to a goalie. It's
too pressure on him.
It's too much pressure. You already have the most pressure of any player on the team, and now you want to put him in front of everybody as the captain. I don't know. But
that is a lot of pressure.
PK's an outspoken guy.
Yes.
I feel like he would be. I think he'd be good as a captain.
I think so too. This is going to be way too interesting to watch. I would love to see PK Subban as the captain of Nashville Predators. As soon as I saw that name up here on the list, I'm like, I couldn't resist asking this question just because of the fact that Montreal's sort of still sour about that whole trade, even though they got a pretty good defenseman.
It's the fans there, so.
Were you not a Subban fan?
I was. I still am.
You still are.
Yeah.
But would you have done that trade if you're a Bergevin?
But
Would you have with that kind of fortitude to go and trade the most popular guy in your city for a guy who's not outspoken but is a very vocal leader in the locker room?
With what happened with Price the season before, yes.
Okay.
Because no one's going to crash Price now.
Yeah. I believe that.
Kreider won't think twice now.
Yeah.
To go into Price.
That
with Weber back there.
Yeah. I do like Shea Weber. I think, that was a good trade. It was so hard to
I believe in the long run, yes. Montreal's going to pay for it because I think Subban's going to last.
Well, Weber is older. We have to.
But of course, Weber had an amazing year this year.
But that's what I mean. Weber's one of those guys that he'll carry. You can carry a team if you really wanted to, and he won't really be vocal about it. He'll do what needs to be done.
Go on the ice and does his job and leaves.
Exactly. I would think, being David Poile, I probably would look at putting Subban as your captain. I just agree. I think he's one of those guys, he can go out, talk to everybody, anybody. He will get that media relations. Because right now, Nashville is hot. Nashville is popular. Mm-hmm. The catfish are being thrown on the ice, and for a good reason. But it's also neat to see from the other side of the perspective that you're looking at PK Subban being the captain, but at the same time, Mike Fisher, the reason I would assume that he got the captaincy was because he's sort of married to Carrie Underwood here. So
country music and
exactly. So you would think that they'll try to keep Mike Fisher around, but we'll get to see that within the next couple of weeks. One thing I love to do with my guests is talk about a little bit what are your favorite things about the NHL. So the first thing I always ask is probably the easiest thing, and that's your favorite NHL team, which
Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, which we've covered.
Best team.
You're a big Flyers fan. We got that.
Okay.
Or not?
That's blasphemy.
No. Okay. You're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite NHL player? It doesn't necessarily have to be a Toronto Maple Leaf, but do you have a favorite NHL player? A big one, obviously, is Wayne Gretzky. But
of all time,
I think everybody can say that. Yeah. But is there a player, for me, again, the last guest that we had here, Mike Wheeland, he said, and I quote, Carlo Koliakovo.
No, he didn't.
Oh, he did!
This is why he does the jokes.
So, but that's what's interesting, is that we get to see what you like. My favorite player, Simon Gagné. And that, again, is one of those answers you probably won't hear. So don't be afraid to say which player you like. I know that there's Gretzky's and the Lemieux, but is there a favorite player to you in the NHL?
I mean, playing in the NHL right now, I would have to say Mitch Marner.
Mitch Marner?
Yeah, he really grew on me. Before that, I was a Sidney Crosby fan. I know that you love
that. That's brutal. That is so brutal.
I've believed in him from day one. I always said he should have won Rookie of the Year over Ovechkin.
You think Crosby should have beaten I don't know.
I think.
Yeah.
But since the day he got drafted, he's been my favorite player. But now, it's kind of one of those.
I think that's the only
he's everybody's favorite player. I'm going to go and pick someone from my team that I want to really enjoy watching, and Mitch Marner just blows my mind every single game.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, over Matthews.
Yeah, Matthews, he's a superstar. He's going to be a superstar his whole career.
Yeah.
But I usually try to go for the more underdog kind of guy.
Exactly what
who doesn't really, he doesn't get the spotlight, but he's kind of on the edge of the spotlight, he's poking his head in.
He's a playmaker kind of player.
He's 100% a playmaker. And the guy's hands are unbelievable.
So, is it safe to say, aside from Mitch Marner, another favorite Leaf that you've always enjoyed watching was Carlo Koliakovo?
And not Doug Gilmour? You know what? Koliakovo, in his time with the Leafs, I enjoyed watching him, yes, but for him to be even on the radar a favorite player would just be absolutely absurd.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see.
Saying the name.
And the funny part is Mike Whelan is a Blues fan. And I pointed out to him that he was technically still a Leafs fan because he also had Alex Steen on it. So there's a couple of players that ended up in the Blues that
I think we can pinpoint the era at which he was a Leafs fan.
Yeah, I guess.
Right around that same time, 2005, 2006.
Yeah. This one is my favorite question, to be honest with you, and that is your favorite NHL moment.
I'm going to guess it was the high stick in 93.
Damn it, Gretzky. No, my favorite NHL moment. Wow.
That sort of repeated itself when Crosby slashed Methot's finger out, didn't it?
Oh, God, yeah. That was nasty.
It was a nasty gash. But yeah.
Honestly, it's going to sound really funny, but my favorite NHL moment was the year that Doug Gilmour came back to Toronto. And he got a penalty, and he slammed the penalty box door shut and shattered the glass and got ejected from the game. That was that memory will forever be engraved in my head. It was so funny, and it was just so unfortunate, but I was dying of laughter.
Oh my god!
I knew this guy; he was going to come back and be a dud. But having Doug Gilmour back on the Leafs just made me think of my childhood.
And that's the funny part is I think that's when I realized that I started to not like the Toronto Maple Leafs
because they just bring back all the old timers.
Well, that's what it was. It was like the Jason Allison and the, you know what I mean? It was one of those things.
Jason Allison would do what? A mile per hour on the ice on a penalty shot.
No, that's why he just stayed behind the net. And when they got back in the offensive zone, he would just circle to the blue line and go back behind the net. It's less skating.
And now you see why I sort of went away from Toronto and I went to another team. Who, by the way, I think when I left and decided to become a fan of the Philadelphia Flyers, and it's funny because I mentioned that to Mike Whelan as well, was the year that they had the lockout because Flyers were one of those physical teams. Yeah. The Broad Street Bullies and all that stuff.
That's when that franchise went down.
And then the lockout happened, and they took out the two-line pass. They were getting beaten. The Flyers were the slowest team. Oh, yeah. So as soon as you said we were talking about Jason Allison here, I'm like, yeah, you want slow.
Yeah.
I decided, I'm going to cheer for the Flyers, and they're like dead last in the league.
You know what? The Leafs. I just want to touch on that. The Leafs, they had a really rough last 40 years. Okay, it's been an even rougher last decade.
Right.
But now there's a light at the end of the tunnel that they are just so close to being a dominant NHL team, and there's no better time to be.
He's calling me as we speak. Mike Whelan is calling into the studio as we speak. I'm gonna ignore it for now.
Yeah, there's no better time to be a Leaf fan than right now.
Yeah. This just in. Leafs trade Matthews.
No, yeah.
There is not a good time to be a Leaf fan right now.
They look like they're...
The one thing that does concern me is when Babcock and Lamoriello, they all came in, and they're like, this is going to hurt, this is going to suck, this is how it's going to be. And not even 2 years in, they're accelerating the process. So we've seen this happen time and time and time again with the Leafs, and here they are sort of repeating the path. You're almost hoping that this works because they have that 2-year gap now with Matthews, Marner, and all them. So you have that 2-year gap, you bring in some veteran presence, you're hoping, you're praying that this sticks. But this just has that same aura that it did from previous years, and I get nervous.
Yeah, is that how it feels on the outside looking in?
It feels because
I don't get that.
Listen, living in Toronto, you want to see them succeed. As much, I like watching the Raptors succeed. I like watching the Leafs succeed. You want the hometown teams to get good results.
No, not really.
But not from the Habs fan.
Not from the Habs fan.
Definitely. But in my opinion, I just see it that they notice that it's working and they want to accelerate it. And I just have this little tiny doubt in the back of my mind that they're kind of second guessing themselves, that they sort of got lucky a little bit and they're like, you know what? Maybe we can try to make this work.
Got to be lucky to be good.
I guess, right?
Just waiting for them to sign Matt Sundin again and try their luck.
Wow. But
You never know, man. I don't
Hey,
know.
the way it's going, you just never know. But that's it for us for this week. I want to thank all the listeners for listening in. We do apologize for not being on last week, but I hope we entertained you once again. You can definitely follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at Talkin Puck, and you can definitely visit us on our website at www.talkinpuck.com. I'd like to thank Andrew Dos Santos for coming into the studio today, and once again, for me and Mike, we'd like to thank you, and we'll see you next week on Talkin Puck.